Christian parenting.
Are video games having a positive or negative impact on your child and your family? Join us for this important conversation today on Family Vision.
Hi, my name is Millie Rienow. Welcome to Family Vision with my parents, Dr. Rob and Amy Rienow, strengthening families through practical, encouraging, and real conversations.
Hi, this is Rob Rienow with Visionary Family Ministries. We are thankful that you are a part of the Family Vision podcast community, and you're going to love today's episode. I'm going to be introducing you to Drew Dixon, and we're going to be talking about the subject of video games and how we can parent and lead our families through this minefield and opportunities of this technological world. Drew, I want to tell you that I really love the name of your ministry, which is Love Thy Nerd, and this new book that you've written called Know Thy Gamer. And I guess I love it because I feel like I can kind of relate. Like that's me. I have a solid nerd streak in me.
Oh, nice.
I could break out some 6th grade pictures for you to confirm that. And is it right for me to assume that you're a bit of a fellow nerd yourself?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely grew up, playing video games, and these days I still play. It just time is hard to find to play video games as much, but I love board games, card games. Certainly get into a lot of nerdy things still with mostly these days with my kids. I kind of follow their nerdy passions mostly, but yeah.
Tell us about your family and these kids.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been married almost 14 years, I guess. I feel like once you get past 10, you have to stop and think like, okay, wait, how many years? Anyway, we have 3 kids. So we have a 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Our youngest just turned 5. So yeah. And
Fantastic.
all gamers on some level,
Boys
all
and
are
girls in that mix.
Yeah. The oldest 2 are girls, and then our youngest is a boy.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, before we get to like navigating this world as parents, I need to have some more personal conversations with you. I need to know about your favorite video games growing up. Now you're a notch younger than me. My oldest is 25. I've got an 8-year-old still, so I'm right there in the thick of it. And we also welcomed our first granddaughter. But do you still, like when you were growing up, you still went to arcades, right? Like with quarters and stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. In fact, my hometown had a nickel arcade, which you paid like $2 to get in.
Okay.
So they had an upfront fee, but then all the games were done by nickels instead of by quarters. So it was a blast. Yeah,
Right,
it was
so
really
I need
cool
to know. So you're going to go to your nickel arcade. You're a junior higher.
Yeah.
And for sure, you're going to play what 3 games?
In the arcade.
Yeah.
Oh, I used to love like Off-Road, the racing game,
Right.
and certainly a lot of the shooter type games, Street Fighter, stuff like that. Yeah. So
I was going to
the arcade anyway.
Yeah, I was going to be playing Dig Dug for sure. Again, these are retro Atari type,
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
But okay, what about the console at home? Tell me about maybe first console you got as a kid, but then like if you had to choose your epic childhood or teen console, what would it be and what games were you playing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I played the first console we had as a family was a Nintendo, the original NES.
Okay.
My parents bought one for themselves. Really, my mom thought it would be something that she and my dad did together. And then they played it a few times and never touched it again. And my brother and I kind of adopted it as our toy. And so my brother and I played a lot of like Contra and Zelda and those kinds of games. And of course, the Mario Brothers games, Super Mario and Super Mario 3 and stuff like that. Probably the console I loved the most growing up would probably be the original PlayStation or the Nintendo 64. I really like Nintendo 64.
Mario 64 it's hard to beat. It's still kind of mind-blowing video game.
Yeah. And it still kind of holds up. I mean, it's one of those games that's still mechanically really satisfying to play. But yeah, I was really into the Mario games and Zelda and Final Fantasy games, those were big in my childhood. Played a lot of Final Fantasy and Zelda.
Well, with the games today, I tell my kids, if I had the games that you have access to, like I never would have left my house, right? I mean, I would have never seen the sun, because they're so amazing, and probably a little too amazing, because the addiction level and all the online play and and all of that. So, all right. So what I want to do is I want to talk with you about negatives and positives in this whole video game world as it relates to our families and with our kids. And I want to start with the positives, because I think usually when people are having a conversation about parenting and video games, it's that the only conversation is the negative and the need for boundaries. And there is a lot of negative for boundaries, but I think there's a big skip over some of the positives. So let's camp out there for a little while. What are the positives for kids, for families, specifically, principally? Go for it.
For me, I always think about things in a like biblical theological framework. And so that's a big part of kind of the first principle chapter of my book. The first chapter is sort of an overview, but then we get into how games are good. And my point there, when I say games are good, is that like anything else in creation, they're brimming with potential. God created us in his image. And so we as human beings have tremendous potential for his glory and for the good of the world. And he created us with this possibility of an incredibly like beautiful and bright future. And so the people who make games are made in God's image. And so they're going to make things that just sort of like blow us away. I mean, you talked about Mario 64. That was sort of a groundbreaking game, because it was one of the first times a lot of people, it wasn't the first 3D game, but it was one of the first 3D games that a lot of people experienced, and just had this like amazing experience of exploring a 3-dimensional world and like seeing where you could go and what you could do, and can you jump through that thing, or can you jump on on that platform. And they're full of imagination and creativity, and they take us to new worlds. And we serve a beautifully creative God who has created this amazing world that's intended. I think he intended this world to blow us away, to awe us, to move us to worship. And so I think you can play video games in that way that sort of just wow you and awe you and bring you into a new world, and make you want to think of new ways to enjoy and worship God. That's sort of a baseline. And of course we know that, games have potential, because we as human beings are broken. We're really good at taking good things that God's made and figuring out ways to use them to hurt and exploit others. But that's not the question you asked. We'll get to that, I'm sure. But so yeah, I mean, like some practical things we could mention is that games are educational. Every time we play them, we're learning something. Even if it's just learning about the world of that game, we're learning lessons. We're learning things sometimes about ourselves too, because when we play a game, we have to make decisions. So sometimes they teach us lessons about ourselves. We learn how to win and lose through games, not just video games, but all kinds of games. Perseverance. Usually when you play a video game, you're going to lose quite a bit. And so that sort of challenges us to go like, okay, how can I approach this problem from a different angle, which is a really valuable skill and tool to hone. You play a video game, which makes it different from other types of media that we consume. So you read a book, you watch a show, you play a game. And so one of the cool things about video games is that your input into the system matters. And so it brings a different level of investment. And some of that's good, because actually our brains are being engaged at a higher level when we play a video game than when we watch a show. And I know there's probably some parents listening to that and think, well, isn't that dangerous? I mean, yeah, I suppose it can be, but it can also be really good, because we learn creative problem solving. But just like any other media, sometimes there's beautiful lessons and truths to be unpacked in video games. There's dangerous ones too. Or deceptive ones too. Yeah, there's a lot of good in this space. There's a lot of potential. And so I want to say to parents that are like ready to sort of rid their homes completely of video games, to stop and think about, let's make sure we've investigated both sides of this.
As you were talking, I flashed back to the choose your own adventure books that they had when I was younger. I don't know if they're still around.
Yeah.
You get to the end of the chapter and you sort of make a choice about, where to go. And a video game, in a sense, especially those that are storytelling games, are really stories, immersive, and you're choosing your own adventure as you're going through them. One of the things I remember, my brother-in-law passed away 5 years ago in a scuba diving accident. And thank you. And my son and his son down in Texas, my son's cousin, they're gamers. And kind of for that year after my nephew's father passed away, they were connecting online, playing. My goodness, I should remember the name of this game. My point is they were connecting with this game, and they had their headsets on, and a lot of times they were just talking about life, not even talking about the game. And it provided an opportunity for connection, maybe that two 7th grade, 8th grade boys, right, might not. They probably wouldn't have called each other on the phone and talked for half an hour or an hour, but they would, through the game. Can you comment on that and just talk about maybe some of the positive sibling or social connections that can get built?
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar connection with my brother when he went off to college and I was still at home. And he decided to get this is the PlayStation 2 era. But yeah, we connected as a way for us to connect. And it was a time of life too when we had very different kind of interests and values, and not a lot in common, but we could play games together. And it was okay, I feel like I'm bonding with my brother. He doesn't hate me. That's another really wonderful aspect about video games, is that they bring people together. There's this stigma about video games is that they're socially isolating, but that doesn't really fit with the narrative today, which is that most people who play games are playing online, and they're playing with other people pretty regularly. A lot of their game time is spent with other people.
Can you talk to parents though? So for me, I don't want my son interacting with random strange people. Are there settings in some of these games that you can set it for friends only, or how does that work?
Oh yeah, for sure. A great resource I always want to point parents to is the ESRB. ESRB.org is the rating board so this is the board that rates games like mature, or E10, which means everyone 10 and above, this game is safe for, or they say it's safe for, right? You still want to do your own homework, but they also have guides to the different consoles and platforms for playing video games of how to set parental controls. So just like there's parental controls on iPhones or smartphones, there's parental controls for PlayStation, Xbox, all the newest iterations, Nintendo Switch, all those have parental controls that a lot of times you can control from your phone or from the console itself, but you can set what games they can and can't play. You can set who they can and can't interact with online. And so you absolutely can do what you were suggesting. You can set it up to where they can only communicate with voice with people who are on their friends list. And then you as a parent can also have some control of who they can and can't friend online, who can be on their friends list. So there's lots of things to do, and it's not as complicated as you might think to set those up. To take a few minutes, watch their guided videos about how to set up those parental controls, and you'll be in a lot better situation in terms of feeling comfortable with your kids playing online. That said, you still need to be careful. This is not setting up the parental controls doesn't then mean oh, I can just let them do whatever they want because I've set up the parental controls. We need to be savvy and remember that our kids are probably savvier than we are in terms of how they use technology. It's not a free pass to just not be careful, but they are really helpful tools that every parent should absolutely educate themselves about.
We are going to keep the conversation with Drew Dixon going next week on Family Vision, but I don't need to remind you that Christmas is coming, and fast. Things can get quite overwhelming very quickly, and honestly, it's easy to lose our focus on celebrating the birth of Jesus. And there's a new Advent resource that we're going to be using in our family this year. It's called Songs Tell the Story. It's a family devotional book. It explores 25 of the popular Christmas songs that we sing around the holidays and explains the message behind them and how they all point to Jesus. So if you're looking for a fun and interactive way to keep your family focused on Christ this season, your family will love this new Advent devotional. Now's the time to grab your copy, The Songs Tell the Story Family Devotional. Just visit cpadvent.org. This is from our partners at Christian Parenting, cpadvent.org, to get your copy today. As always, you can reach us through email at podcast@visionaryfam.com. That's podcast@visionaryfam.com. We would enjoy hearing from you, hearing testimonies about how Family Vision has made an impact in your family. And we would also be grateful for your support. We are committed to sharing the good news of Jesus with families all around the world, and we would love your help. You can support our ministry at visionaryfam.com/donate. That's visionaryfam.com/donate. And we look forward to our next time with you on Family Vision.